Are we all classic cheats? The question seems simple, but like most simple questions, it opens into something larger, something difficult to grasp. To cheat, after all, is to bend a rule, not always to break it entirely, but to nudge it, to make it pliable in the service of something we want. And when you look closely enough, the world itself begins to look like a tapestry of these tiny bends, each thread pulling in a slightly selfish direction, each person adjusting what is fair into what is tolerable, what is justifiable, what can be lived with. It begins in childhood, when the lines between honesty and dishonesty are not yet as rigid as adults pretend they are. A child sneaks an extra cookie from the jar, swears they didn't, and learns two things. First, that rules can be bent, and second, that the bending of them is not always punished. The game continues in school, where homework is copied from a friend under the noble excuse of just this once, or test answers are glimpsed from the corner of an eye because everyone does it. These moments are rarely remembered later, but they etch a lesson into the mind. Rules are not absolute. They are obstacles, and obstacles can be shifted. Later, as adults, we see the same story written in larger letters. Taxes filed with just a little exaggeration here, a minor omission there. Speeding slightly when late for work, justifying it because the road is clear. Taking office supplies home and calling it harmless. Standing in line and pretending not to notice when we step ahead of someone distracted. These are not the grand scandals of history, but the private cheats of ordinary life. We soothe ourselves with reasons. It's not hurting anyone. They owe me. I deserve it after everything. Psychologists will tell you that the human mind is built for this. We carry two voices inside us, one that wants to follow the rules and one that wants to win. And when the stakes feel small, when no one seems to be watching, the second voice nearly always whispers louder. We do not call it cheating when it is us. We call it being practical, being clever, taking advantage of opportunity. But when others do the same, suddenly the word cheat fits easily. The driver cutting us off in traffic is reckless, unfair. The colleague padding their resume is dishonest. The neighbor who bends the homeowner's rules is sneaky. We hate in others what we quietly allow in ourselves. There is, too, a strange morality to our cheats. People often cheat just enough to feel they've gained, but not so much that they feel they've betrayed who they are. Students copy half the answers, not all. Employees round up hours slightly, not wildly. Lovers in strained relationships flirt at the edge of infidelity, convincing themselves they've not crossed the line. The human conscience is elastic, stretching just far enough to fit our desires without tearing completely. We want to believe we are good people, even while we bend what good means. History itself is filled with great cheats elevated into legends. Explorers who claimed lands that were not theirs. Politicians who twisted words into power. Inventors who borrowed from rivals and called it genius. Some of these cheats are condemned. Others are celebrated, remembered as clever strategists or pioneers who knew how to play the game. Time has a way of turning cheating into innovation, dishonesty into cunning. Perhaps this, too, is part of the psychology, the recognition that winning, no matter how, often writes the story of what is acceptable. And yet, not all cheats are selfish. Sometimes they come from desperation. The poor man who steals bread for his children is breaking a rule, yes, but bending it under the weight of survival. The woman who lies on an application to secure a job is cheating the system, but also trying to step into dignity. Here the question of morality blurs even further, because what feels like a cheat in one light can look like justice in another. Society itself cheats, after all, when it sets up rules that serve the powerful and disadvantage the weak. So, are we all classic cheats? In some way, yes. To be human is to live in the tension between rules and desires, between ideals and realities. Most of us will not commit crimes that fill the news, but each day we negotiate with the boundaries drawn around us, bending them until they suit our lives. Some cheats we will regret, others we will carry proudly, and many will vanish into memory, unnoticed except in the quiet shaping of our character. Perhaps the more interesting question is not whether we cheat, but how we explain it to ourselves. Because in the end, cheating is not just about breaking rules. It is about the stories we tell to justify why our bending of them was necessary, harmless, even right. And those stories, spoken only to ourselves, may be the most classic cheat of all. We like to believe rules are fixed, etched in stone, but life constantly shows us otherwise. A man jaywalks across an empty street and feels no guilt, though the sign glows red. A woman uses her friend's streaming account and feels clever rather than criminal. A child hides a bad grade from their parents, convinced it spares everyone unnecessary pain. These are cheats so small they barely deserve the word, yet they accumulate like pebbles on a scale. They tilt the balance of who we are one tiny bend at a time. And yet, the fascinating part is not the act itself. It is the justification. Human beings are expert storytellers, especially to themselves. Each cheat is paired with a narrative. If the company pays me so little, I deserve these perks. If the government wastes taxes, why should I be honest on my forms? If the game is rigged, why shouldn't I bend the rules too? This narrative turns the cheat from a violation into a correction, a small rebellion against a world we suspect is already cheating us. In this way, dishonesty often wears the mask of fairness. There is another layer, subtler still. We admire cheats from a distance. Movies, books, and legends are filled with tricksters and con artists, charming figures who bend rules and walk away grinning. Robin Hood steals, but becomes a hero. The gambler who beats the casino is cheered. The underdog who finds a loophole against the powerful is celebrated as ingenious. Fiction reflects something we know but rarely admit, that deep down, we envy the boldness of those who dare to do what we only whisper about in our minds. In workplaces, cheating becomes almost ritualized. An employee pretends to look busy while scrolling on their phone, another exaggerates progress in a meeting to avoid criticism, and both believe they are only surviving the game everyone else is playing. In politics, leaders twist rules until truth itself seems negotiable, and citizens, though outraged on the surface, learn to mimic the same bending of reality in smaller ways. It is as though cheating flows downward, from the top to the bottom, a slow erosion of strict honesty until it seems quaint, even naive. But not all cheats are so conscious. Sometimes we cheat without even realizing it. Memory, for example, bends like a rule. We misremember our choices in ways that flatter us, recall our intentions as nobler than they were, smooth over the corners of guilt until our past feels cleaner than it truly is. Even in solitude, even with no prize to win, the mind cheats for the sake of comfort. We bend not only society's rules, but the rules of our own recollection, so that we can go on believing we are better than we are. And still, the question presses. If everyone cheats in small ways, does cheating cease to be a sin and become merely human nature? Or is it the opposite, that because we all do it, it is the most universal of flaws, the proof that no one escapes compromise? Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that rules themselves are inventions, written and rewritten by humans no less fallible than the rest of us. If those who create the rules bend them to maintain power, can we truly be shocked when the rest of us bend them to survive? What we call cheating may, in another light, simply be adaptation, a way of living in a world where perfection and strict obedience are impossible. In the end, the psychology of bending rules is not about weakness or wickedness alone. It is about desire, necessity, envy, fear, survival, and the relentless search for advantage in a crowded world. We cheat not because we are villains, but because we are human. Some cheats will destroy, others will liberate. Some will shame us, others will save us. And maybe the question, are we all classic cheats, has only one answer. Yes, we are. Not always in grand betrayals, not always with malice, but in the countless quiet ways we bend the world just enough to let us keep walking forward. A boy sits at a school desk, pencil in hand, eyes darting nervously. He knows the answer isn't in his memory, but in the corner of the page of the girl beside him. He glances once, quickly copies, and his heart races. In that tiny moment, he learns two lessons: that cheating is thrilling and that it works. Decades later, he will hardly remember the question on the test, but he will remember the rush of getting away with it. Elsewhere, A man in a suit parks his car in a space labeled visitors only. He tells himself it's temporary, just for a few minutes. He has an important meeting and really rules about parking are silly anyway. But in bending the rule, he isn't just stealing convenience, he's affirming the story he carries, that his time is more valuable than others. Cheats don't just break boundaries, they reinforce identities. At the same hour, a woman walks through a grocery store. She places grapes into her bag, but before sealing it, she tastes a handful. They're overpriced anyway, she thinks. Besides, I should know if they're sweet before buying. The store loses a little. She gains a little, and the balance feels fair in her mind. She doesn't call it stealing.
She calls it sampling.
And then there's the politician who, under the glow of cameras, promises reform, fairness, honesty. His smile is polished, his words carefully rehearsed. Behind the stage, however, deals are struck in whispers, compromises are made, donations secured with promises no one will read about. He cheats openly, but cloaks it in the grand theater of politics. People boo him publicly, then re-elect him privately, because in their hearts, they admire his cunning, even if they won't admit it. Cheating wears many masks. Sometimes it is a wink shared between two friends who split a bill unfairly, knowing one ate far more. Sometimes it is a spouse hiding a message thread, convincing themselves it is harmless to protect peace. Sometimes it is a corporation exploiting loopholes, paying less in taxes than a single struggling family, and calling it strategy. Each act feels different in scale, but the psychology behind them is the same. Rules exist, and we twist them until they fit our wants. The fascinating part is how often cheating is hidden even from ourselves. Ask anyone if they're honest, and most will say yes. Ask them if they cheat, and most will say no. But probe gently, and cracks appear. Have you ever exaggerated on a resume? Have you ever lied to spare someone's feelings? Have you ever called in sick when you weren't? These are cheats so normalized they no longer feel like cheats at all. What was once dishonest has been absorbed into the fabric of everyday life. And yet, for every cheat, there is a cost. The boy who copied answers grows into a man who fears failure because he never learned to face it. The worker who exaggerates progress finds themselves tangled in lies too complex to sustain. The lover who bends a truth one evening may discover trust is easier to lose than to rebuild. Cheating may bring a quick advantage, but it leaves a quiet erosion in its wake. Still, the story is never simple. There are cheats born of cruelty, yes, but also cheats born of kindness. The nurse who bends protocol to let a grieving family see their loved one last time. The teacher who quietly boosts a grade so a hardworking student can graduate. The friend who lies to spare another from a truth they aren't ready to bear. Are these cheats wrong? Or are they a deeper kind of right? The rules are rigid. Life is not. Perhaps that is why we all do it in one way or another. Because rules are abstractions, written for the masses, but life is particular, messy, filled with edges and exceptions. To live without ever bending them would be to deny the full chaos of being human. So maybe the truth is not simply that we are all cheats. Maybe the truth is that cheating is part of how we navigate existence. It reveals who we are when faced with choice: selfish, clever, desperate, compassionate, fearful, bold. In each small bend of the rules, we expose the shape of our own humanity. And perhaps that is why, when we catch ourselves cheating, we rarely feel as guilty as we ought. Somewhere deep inside, we suspect that everyone else is doing it too. And more often than not, we're right.